Welcome into Bucs Insider, coming to you from the Bucs studio, presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith and Bri Dix, and unfortunately the season has come to a close. This is always our saddest show we do every year, but it was an incredible season with a lot of interesting things to talk about. So we felt like this is a good time to not only recap that game, but the season overall, and then of course start looking forward to the offseason, because as much as the season ends, football and the things about never ends. The NFL has found a way to be relevant every month of the year.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
And why we'll be back next week.
Next week and all the weeks after that to still be talking about everything that is happening here. So before we get into some of the breaking down of that game and future stuff coming up, let's just talk about a little bit of the news that has come out in these last couple days that, as we mentioned, football never stops. So, hey, futures contracts have happened.
Yeah, that's what teams do. Because this season hasn't actually ended yet, it doesn't end until the Super Bowl is over, but teams can start preparing their roster for the next year, and they do that by signing players to reserve futures contracts is what they're called, and then after the Super Bowl they become active to the next season's roster. And so the Buccaneers, you always do that as soon as your season ends, and it's almost always just all the guys you had on your practice squad, which is what the Buccaneers did on Tuesday, because all practice squad contracts expire as soon as your team's season ends, and so they're free agents all of a sudden, and the Bucs re-signed 17 of them, which is almost all of them, counting a couple guys that were on the injured list. The two I'd like to highlight is kind of on the two ends of the spectrum of a practice squad player. You got a rookie in Michael Pratt, a quarterback that actually the Packers drafted, but we obviously liked, and when they cut him, we picked him up real quick and made efforts throughout the season to keep him around because there was interest in him from other teams. That's why, we saw him get elevated for 3 game days, which there was no need for that because we already had 2 quarterbacks and he was inactive anyway, but that's kind of a reward to help keep a guy around. I think that Michael Pratt has a chance to compete this coming year with whoever we bring in or bring back for the number 2 job. And then you got, on the other end, you got Deion Jones, who's a guy we all know. He's been in the league for like 9 years, most of that with the Falcons. And the Bucs picked him up late, elevated him a few times, and at the end of the season on Monday, head coach Todd Bowles said he's a guy that, it was a small sample size of what they saw, but they'd like to keep him around and like to have him back next year. So, there's a lot of guys, and last year 3 guys that were signed at this same time of the year actually made the team. Jose Ramirez, Ryan Miller, who played a lot, and C.J. Brewer. So they're not insignificant signings. They could
be people who end up contributing as well, for sure. And then, of course, when the season ends, that's also when we find out our draft pick, the thing that we will be talking about endlessly for the next few months. So this is always important to us to know exactly where the Bucs are going to be picking. So tell us what that number is and how we got to that place.
The Bucs will be 19th for the second time in 3 years. It was 2023 drafted Kalijah Kancey, and then 2017. O.J. Howard, Kalijah Kancey.
Not a bad one to see what you could get at that spot.
And so the Buccaneers and everybody eliminated in the wild card round were slotted 19th through 24th, and the Bucs were tied with Denver and Pittsburgh with a 10-7 record. And then the first tiebreaker is strength of schedule, which is the combined winning percentage of all your opponents from last year. But Pittsburgh and the Broncos and the Bucs were all tied in that one. 502. So you go through the tiebreaking procedures, and what happens is you have to eliminate all but one team from each conference, and so Pittsburgh beat Denver head-to-head, so Pittsburgh's out, and then it's Bucs against Denver, and remember, unfortunately, but now it's good, Denver beat us in week 3, so they're out. So Bucs get 19, Denver 20, Pittsburgh 21.
It's going to be
and then it rotates each round.
Right, yeah, that's going to be interesting for sure. All right, so let's dive a little bit into that last game that happened, some of the takeaways from it. I figured, like we should basically all the time, we should start with Baker. This guy has just been incredible for us all year, and even though I know the offense would like some plays back, wish, of course, they could have been on the field a little bit longer as well. That was a huge part of it. Baker still had an incredible game, and it's just amazing how every week this year it feels like we're talking about some sort of either personal record for him, franchise record, league record of some sort that he's been doing with these numbers he's been putting up. And it was no different in this last game. He finished 15 of 18 for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns, which set a new franchise high completion percentage in a playoff game and the highest passer rating in a playoff game in franchise history. And now we also know he has the best career passer rating of all active quarterbacks with at least 2 playoff starts. Unbelievable.
Love it.
Unbelievable statistics and showing just the efficiency. And that doesn't even include what we see here, him doing it with his legs as well, which we aren't going to talk about that call that didn't happen anyways. I just feel like it's been incredible to watch the way that we talked about that stat that was so amazing about the 70% completion all year and the over 5 yards a carry, of just showing how balanced and efficient this offense was. And a lot of that is due to Baker. And even though there were some picks, we see that his completion percentage, his passer rating, all of those things, like he played a great game. He played a great season. And I just felt like we really needed to shout him out for all of the things that he did as a leader, being sort of the heart and soul of this team in so many ways, the way he lowered his shoulder, got guys fired up, may or may not have started fights against New Orleans and helped spark things. Like he just did everything you could want out of a quarterback and more. So I felt like that was just an amazing set of stats to
this is a franchise that employed Tom Brady, and we can still say that this season from Baker was easily one of the best by a quarterback in franchise history.
Yeah.
The numbers prove it, and then he goes into the playoffs and keeps it going.
That's amazing. And then also, of course, offensively, there were other high performers all season and in this game in particular. So tell us some of the guys that stood out to you this game.
So Mike Evans and Bucky Irving. So the Bucs went into halftime tied at 10 following the 1-yard touchdown by Mike Evans. And I love this play. It was kind of a play that Liam Cohen, they had run a couple weeks prior, where Mike Evans once again faked the outside release that he was going to go and catch the fade from Baker Mayfield, then worked inside with leverage against Marshawn Lattimore for the touchdown. But also, that throw by Baker Mayfield was insane. That's incredible. About as tight of a window as you can get. So Quan Martin dropped in coverage. Baker Mayfield soared the ball about an inch over his helmet, through his outstretched arms, and into Mike Evans for the score. And then Bucky Irving, the Bucs went into the fourth frame with a 17-13 advantage following his 4-yard touchdown catch. And Mike Evans drew double coverage on the left side of the formation, which set up single coverage for Jalen McMillan for Bucky Irving on the right side. And then Jalen McMillan kind of served as that decoy, which provided Bucky Irving with an open shot to the end zone. But, I mean, both ended up with over 1,000 yards. Bucky Irving had the best forced missed tackle percentage in the NFL, led all rookies in forced missed tackles. And then Mike Evans just did it again, and another 1,000-yard season for the 11th consecutive. And I think one of the impressive things, too, about Mike Evans is not only has he done it with various offensive coordinators, different schemes, different quarterbacks, but you also think about slot receivers. They have more route options. You have more space to work with. Mike Evans is dealing with the sideline. There isn't as much for him. You're running full speed down, and he's still a guy that's been able to have the longevity, have the durability to get 1,000 every single year of his career.
Pretty incredible.
So
go ahead.
You're telling me that we had a record passer rating performance by the quarterback. Your stars, Mike Evans and Bucky Irving, had big games as expected and scored. And the Bucs only allowed 1 sack and converted almost 60% of their third downs, and we lost.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It just didn't have the ball enough.
Right.
Yeah,
time of possession.
And you got to give Jaden Daniels and company credit for that. And they're, Dan Quinn going for it on fourth down 5 times.
It's hard to stop a team 4 downs. To get a first down. I mean, that's the thing. It's just a lot of teams won't, they'll punt more often, but the Commanders all year were going for it, and they were the number 1 in the league at those conversion rates of those, third and fourth and shorts. And it's such a tough thing to go up against when you know that how often they're going to be doing that and how well they do it when their quarterback can run, when they've got a lot of other weapons out there. It's a hard group to stop. And so I know defensively, that's a tough task for this defense. They had a lot of interesting weapons, but they were still able to do some pretty good things. Even I'm sure it's tough in hindsight to look back on, but
the Commanders had the 3rd-ranked rushing attack in the NFL this year, and Jaden Daniels obviously had a lot to do with that. And they held him to 2.5 yards per carry. And Daniels didn't really go crazy. I think he had 35 yards, something like that.
Right.
But he did enough to move the change. So. They had we talk about how they went for it on 5 third downs, which is committing to it, because you have to understand you're not going to make all of them. They made 3 of 5. But one they didn't make, and I think we're seeing it here, is that goal line stand, which the Buccaneers were winning by 4 points, I believe, at the time. They get a 1st and goal at the 1, I think, on a pass interference call, right, on Zion McCollum, if I'm not mistaken. And which I still don't understand why they don't call uncatchable passes anymore on that rule, but whatever. Amazing goal line stand, and then Mike Evans makes that incredible play to convert the 3rd down where he catches the ball and falling backwards.
Space Jam arms it,
That was insane.
I hadn't heard that one before. That's good. it just felt like all the momentum was there for the Bucs. They had a chance to go down and get a 2-score lead. There was about 14 minutes left and maybe 13 minutes left at that point after the first down. And then you have the botched handoff on the end around, and that was that. That was the complete switch of momentum, and we all know what happened after that. So, there was a chance for the defense to come out of that game feeling like, okay, we weathered the storm.
Yeah.
We did enough. And if they had held them below 20 points, the Buccaneers probably would have won. They were 6-0 this season when they held their opponents under 20 points. But that fumble, that's what did it.
That's so tough. But yeah, I mean, 4th and goal from the 1. Or 1st and goal, sorry. 1st and goal from the 1. Yeah. How often are you stopping that against anyone, much less the team that has the top conversion percentage of that?
Right.
That truly was one of the most incredible defensive stands and one of the most incredible things I've ever seen.
And it just felt like it was the turning point for the Bucs, and then moments later, the other turning point happened.
The other turning point happened. Too many turning points too quickly. All right, so now it is time for our trivia question. Bri, what do we got?
The Buccaneers own the 19th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, but could conceivably trade up for a coveted player. The biggest trade-up the Bucs ever have made to draft a player in the first round was 7 spots in 2001. Who was the player they drafted?
Of course I don't know this. This is just...
Yeah, I looked at the answer, and I would not have guessed that.
Didn't even recognize the name.
Nope,
Y'all need to study your Buccaneers history. That's your assignment for the offseason.
This is what I viewed this segment as. This is my history lesson.
Right, okay.
So, but the problem is I already saying that now. I'm like, God, if he asks the same question again, and then we still don't get it. That's going to be really embarrassing.
Right. Like 2 months
is there
from
a test? Yeah. Is that a thing now at the end of the offseason? Is there going to be a test on if we paid attention to all of these answers? Hopefully you guys know it more than we do. So we'll give you that answer later on in the show. So, all right, we figured, this is always typically when we talk about a milestone we'd be paying attention to in the next game.
Right.
So instead, we just kind of figured we'd kind of go over some milestones the team produced this game, some things that we had watched in recent weeks. So figured we'd talk about a milestone that they already have hit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the big thing here is coaches say it all the time, and they really do mean it. Believe me, the teams mean this when they say it, when they say only one team is happy at the end of the season. 31 other teams go home unhappy because the goal is to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
And it's more realistic for some teams than others every year, but the Buccaneers really felt like they had a shot and didn't think it was going to be a one and done. So acknowledging all of that, you could still take a step back and say, the Buccaneers have made the playoffs 5 straight years. They're the only team in the NFC to have done so the last 5 years, and they've won 4 straight division titles for the first time ever, tying the Saints from 2017 to 20 for the longest run since this division was formed in 2002. And so they have a chance next year to make it 5 in a row and have the longest streak in the history. That would be the most dominant run in the history of this division. And you could say that this is a golden era of Buccaneers history. You don't want to forget about 97 to 2002, which was great also and ended in a Super Bowl, but this one also included a Super Bowl win and 4 straight division titles and 5 straight trips to the playoffs. The Bucs had never done that before. So it's a good time to be a Buccaneers fan right now. And there's all kinds of reasons to think that this, and we're going to talk about it here in a second, that this team next year should be considered if not the favorite, at least a prime contender to win this division again.
Yep, I completely agree with that. All right, well, also we figured we'd talk about just some other notable accomplishments, awards that this team was given this year, because it felt like there were just so many. We wanted to kind of recap that of just all the incredible things that this team was able to accomplish. The first one is this has happened since our last show, so we definitely wanted to hit on this. Tristan Wirfs becoming the first player ever to be first team AP All-Pro at both right and left tackle. Just in general, like, how many players have been All-Pro at 2 different positions? Like, it's insane. Like, that's a wild stat. To be All-Pro even once at one position is already very impressive. Huge accomplishment. There's so many talented players in this league at so many different positions. And Tristan was like, let me do it at 2 different positions. In the first how many years of his career? I mean, it's unreal how quickly he had success, and then to be able to switch. I mean, I think about how recently it felt like we were talking about him having anxiety.
Yes.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, about switching positions. And I'm hoping it's gone now. I'm hoping that at this point, Tristan can lay his head on his pillow at night and be like, you know what, I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or did he block 2 players on that play we're watching right now?
It's unbelievable. He can take on all the people. He's just so big and so strong. And again, we've talked about this before, but it is so impressive to switch from right to left tackle, that it is not the same thing, even though they are both tackle and they are both offensive line, that everyone, I want you to go try and write with your opposite hand right now, or do anything you don't normally do with your opposite hand, and tell me if you think you could do that at an all-pro level. And I think it is a good way to remember how incredible it is what he was able to accomplish, and how thankful we are we have him, and that we were even just not that long ago talking about whether, getting him re-signed and the stress of that, and I think we're all very happy that got resolved.
Yes.
So yeah, tell me, what are some other awards that stand out to you guys?
Well, we had the Bucs won a number of Player of the Week awards this year. I think I'll put my glasses on and read them and make sure I get it right. The first one was the most surprising one, of course. It was Sean Tucker in Week 6 in New Orleans when Rashad White didn't play, and Bucky and Sean ran roughshod over the Saints. So, and then Bucky himself won it in Week 13 after a strong performance in that big win in Carolina. And then Baker finished the season really strong by winning it in Weeks 15 and 17 against the Chargers and the Panthers. And finally, we got a defensive one in the very last week of the season with Yaya Diaby when he had the sack and the 4 tackles for loss and the 4 quarterback hits. So I think 6, is that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yep.
5 in 18 weeks is pretty good.
Again, yeah, because it's only, one on either side of the ball. That's pretty amazing.
Yep.
And then also, as we mentioned, Bucky Irving was one of those people, and he had even more awards even than just that Player of the Week.
Yes, he is one of the 6 finalists for the 2024 Pepsi Zero Sugar Offensive Rookie of the Year award.
That's a lot of words.
Yeah, it's a lot of words.
Joining Brock Bowers, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Bo Nix, and Brian Thomas Jr. And the winner will be decided by fan votes, so go cast your ballots at NFL.com/rookies, and the voting ends Friday, January 31st.
Yeah,
So get on it.
Give us that website one more
So-
time
We'll
for
do it.
everybody.
Yes,
We'll pitch in.
NFL.com/rookies, and then the winner will be announced during Super Bowl week. But just what an amazing season he had. He led all rookies in scrimmage yards, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns, and obviously led the NFL in forced missed tackle percentage.
Yep.
Yeah, and quarterbacks always win this award when it's like chosen by the media or the league. So come on, guys, let's get out there and give one to a running back.
Give one to a running back.
Help us out.
Spread the wealth.
Get some votes out there.
To all the people. All right, and this is where we always like to give you guys a little update about off the field, human interest, fun things. And even though the season ended, there was some really great news recently for a member of the Buccaneers who had a rough year. Chris Godwin, who, man, I think about how cool the timing of this is. He and his wife, Mariah, had their first child. Look at how adorable. Little Ace. I just love that. And I feel like it's such a cool timing of, again, how challenging to go through that injury, and then to have such a joyful thing also come into his life, and even for him to have more free time because he wasn't playing. Like the timing was amazing of like the time he got to have with her while she was pregnant, and then getting to have that baby because, he was otherwise have been a little busy when that baby came.
No sleep now.
Yep, and so get that no sleep out of the way now while he's not having to play football and be ready to go come next year. But congratulations to them, just so exciting. What an adorable child who I think we should go ahead and draft right now. That is my guess
Future
on that.
rights.
Future rights, yeah, those future contracts we talked about, just add on there Ace Godwin. Okay, so now let's look ahead to the offseason of now that football is over. What are some of the things that fans can be paying attention to, that next stuff on the calendar for people to keep an eye on?
Yeah, obviously we got the Super Bowl coming up, but the Pro Bowl is on February 2, and Tristan Wirfs will be Pro Bowl games. Tristan Wirfs will be taking
Pro
part.
Bowl things.
Yeah, there's still a chance that some of our alternates could get in, including Baker, because let's see, 2 of the 3 ahead of him are still in the playoffs. That's Jared Goff and Jaden Daniels. So there's still a shot Baker will be in it too, and he was the offensive MVP of those games last year. But then when we turn our attention really to next year, you got the Combine coming up in late February the 24th to March 3rd. That's always a nice time to start really focusing on the draft. You got free agency begins March 12th, and then there's the 2.5 days before that when you can negotiate with their agents. The annual league meetings at the end of March, the 30th to April 2nd, those are important because that's when they start talking about rule changes. And then the offseason program for the Buccaneers will begin April 21st.
Okay, and then
then the draft, obviously.
Yes, and the draft, of
24th
course.
to 26th.
So also a big thing I know we talk about paying attention to every year is the free agency list. And last year it was a stressful one all the way around. So are we going to be as stressed? Is Jason Light going to be as busy this year in terms of our own guys that we would have to decide about re-signing?
Not as glaringly bad and anxious filled as in previous years, but Chris Godwin and Levante David certainly headlined that group of unrestricted free agents that will certainly be a top priority for the Bucs brass. Chris Godwin, at the time before the dislocated ankle, he was leading the NFL in receptions, yak yards, and I think he was second in the NFL in receiving yards. Was just absolutely having a career year, was on pace to win the Triple Crown, just was a huge, huge point of emphasis for this offense. And then Levante David, just every year there is zero signs of regression at 34 years old, still led the Bucs in tackles, finished with over 100, still has the speed, the instincts, the range, and just continues to put forth a Hall of Fame caliber career together. And then also among the list is the 2021 draft class. So Joe Tryon, Sharinka, Kyle Trask, Robert Hainsey, and KJ Britt, yes. Mm-hmm. And then Ben Bredesen, Mike Edwards, also on the list along with Anthony Nelson.
Yeah, that's not nearly as daunting of a list.
No.
As
right.
Not just last year, but several times. Like after the Super Bowl, remember the whole keeping the band together thing?
Yeah.
Right.
So it leads you to think maybe for the first time in a while, the Bucs might have some space and some inclination to do a little more shopping in free agency rather than just
I think they have about $22 million in cap space.
At the moment.
So, yeah.
And it's felt like there have been a lot of years, I remember us talking about the way that Jason Light seemed to enjoy trying to do the free agency draft combination of get a corner in both, get a this in both. I think it'll be really interesting to see if now, because we have some flexibility to maybe try to go after some free agents, do you try to shore up certain positions both ways as that insurance policy of, well, theoretically, one of these will work and trying to kind of double it up. I think that's going to be interesting.
I think he also likes to go into the draft not being forced into taking a certain position or two. So if you can like address where you have holes before the draft, then you can go in and take the best available player at
wherever it is.
19.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And then also wanted to remind everybody in terms of next things coming up as we were discussing this schedule, the Bucs cruise still has a few cabins left for sale. I was talking to the cruise people yesterday, making sure that was the case before I told you all to go buy it. And there are still cabins available. And so if you have not been on this before, or if you have, you should come again. If you haven't been yet, it is so fun. It's such a great way to get to hang out with a lot of Bucs players in such a cool environment that you'll see guys just down by the pool hanging out, and you're on a cruise with Bucs players, and there's usually cheer and fear, and I go and alumni players go, and it is so much fun. We do panel discussions, we do events, and also you get to go on a cruise, which is super fun. So if you would like to do that, visit TampaBayBucsCruise.com. Again, that's TampaBayBucsCruise.com, and that's how you'll be able to submit to be able to go. And you have to book it through the Bucs side if you want to go to the Bucs activities. Don't just go book the cruise how you normally would. You have to do it through the Buccaneers way, because that's how you get access to those events, because there are other people on the cruise that aren't the Bucs people that don't go to those things. So make sure, again, TampaBayBucsCruise.com, so we can fully sell that thing out and have a party.
And they get to hang out with you?
I mean, I didn't want to say, but that's the biggest part of it.
The main attraction.
The main attraction of the whole thing is getting to hang out with me on a cruise, of course. Okay, so it is time for the answer to the trivia question.
So the Buccaneers traded, in 2001, the Buccaneers traded the 21st and 51st picks, that was their first and second rounders, in the 2001 draft to Buffalo for the 14th pick, which they used on Florida tackle Kenyatta Walker.
I'm going to give you a list of players that I have a chance of knowing the answer. And that's now the new rule. Basically, it's like it has to be Rondé or Levante or Mike Evans or, you know, like, Warren Sapp or Derek Brooks or John Lynch or something. Otherwise, I have no shot.
All right. Kenyatta wasn't the most successful pick in team history, but he did start 73 of the 75 games that he played, and he was a starter at right tackle. They switched him after 1 year from left tackle to right tackle. He was a starter on the Super Bowl winning 2002 team, and the offensive line was fantastic in the playoffs. You know, it wasn't, he's not the biggest star in team history, but he was a starter on the Super Bowl team.
I think maybe Bri and I should take over trivia to ask you and see if we can stump you.
Give it a try.
Oh my
I know.
goodness.
I think this sounds fun. Maybe this is what we do in the off season. You can have it during the season, and in the off season,
we can
poll Bucs fans to submit questions they think could stump you.
Yeah, good
luck
with
that.
that.
Now, instead of it being even trivia, it's called Stump Scott.
Oh, I'm so excited. We can dig into the archives,
I like
get
this
something
idea.
really up.
Yeah, the archives for you guys will be like 2014.
I know. It's very true. You did pick the exact year before I got here.
Who was Jason Light's first draft pick?
That one I know.
Yeah.
That one I know.
That would be Mike Evans.
That would be Mike Evans for sure.
All
right.
right, Stump Scott, let's go.
Stump Scott, that's our new idea here for a segment. So Bucs fans, please send us your Stump Scott things.
Where do they send them to?
I was like, send them. We'll figure that out. We'll do submissions on how to do it. It can't be publicly where he could see it, but we'll try. Maybe an Instagram DM to one of the two of us so you can't see it. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Bucs Insider. Thanks so much for being with us this season, and we'll see you next time.